gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the Lakeshore Museum Center. On behalf of the staff, my name is Jackie Huss and I am the Curator of Education. We're happy to see such a wonderful turnout on such a not so wonderful day, better than earlier in the week though. This reception is twofold. We're here not only for a panel presentation, but also because of the exhibit that we have, the Bittersweet Harvest, the Bracero program, which comes from the Smithsonian Institution of Traveling Exhibit Services. In 1943, President Roosevelt announced the creation of what will become the largest Mexican guest worker program in the United States. Facing labor shortages on the home front during World War II, the United States initiated a series of agreements with Mexico to recruit Mexican men to work on American farms and railroads. The Emergency Farm Labor Program, more familiarly known as the Bracero program, enabled 2 million Mexicans to enter the United States and work on short-term labor contracts. Muskegon County's connection is through the Swanson Pickle Company in Ravenna, which began to recruit workers from Mexico during World War II under the Bracero Act, and later Swanson Pickle, as well as other local companies, hired many Mexican-American migrant workers. If you haven't noticed, we do have a memory book that is available both in the exhibit as well as on the back table. And we ask any of our guests who have Hispanic heritage or are Hispanic themselves, if you're willing to answer 4 questions about your family's heritage, that will be included in our memory book, which will be accessioned into the museum archives at the end of the exhibit and will be available for research purposes. So the other reason we're here is for our panel presenters. We're happy to welcome Dr. Daniel Yakes and Connie Navarro, the authors of The New Home in Michigan, The Mexican-American Experience, and they will be leading the panel discussion about the relocation of Mexicans and Mexican-Americans who came to Muskegon around the World War II time period. They are joined by Guadalupe Cortez, Betty Barr, Ramiro Rodriguez, Alberto Guerrero, and Maria Guerrero. So if you could join me in welcoming them, I will turn it over.
Buenas tardes y gracias por venir. I'd like to thank you for coming and welcoming you to be here. On behalf of Latinos Over for the Future, on behalf of the museum, on behalf of a lot of things, especially to God, that we're here. When this started, and the thing is that I'm going to go ahead and thank John McGarrett from the museum for having us here, and also Richard Mullally, who is doing the veterans program here, and he is one of the ones that's looking for veterans, especially Latinos, any veteran, that's World War I, World War II, that either lived here in Muskegon or living at Ryerson Heights. And as you can see on here, we've got pictures of some of the Latinos that were in the war at the time. He is going to speak. We're going to have him speak before we start. And so I'd like to introduce John McGarrett first from the museum. Would you please come up, John? All this started with John McGarrett, and I'll have to explain when I start talking.
I think that everybody in the room knows that when Connie asks you a question, there is no in the answer. And a few years ago, Connie, I think it was about 7 or 10 years ago, Connie came to me and we started talking about the history of La Colonia. And she said, this history is being lost and we need to preserve it and to save it. And that was the start of many wonderful things. But in particular, they did an excellent job of starting the preservation of that history with this book and this roundtable that's going to take part today. But I'm here to ask you to help the museum to continue preserving that history. Many of you have family photographs. Many of you have family information out there. And we would very much appreciate it if you would share that with the museum. You don't necessarily need to donate your photographs. Just bring them in and let us borrow them. We will scan them and keep them so that the history of your families the history of this wonderful community can be preserved forever in the archives of our museum. And I'm sure that Dr. Yates and Connie are going to discuss that more as they go through this. But if there's any way that we can help you to help us to preserve that information, please feel free to contact us. Beryl Gable, who is standing over by the door, is our archivist and will be the person that will be processing this information. And we're actively seeking your story to preserve an important part of Muskegon County's history. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And we're going to have Richard Mullally speak a little bit right now. Richard, when he called me, he said, Connie, again, like Jen says, you know, you can't say no to Connie. Well, I can't say no to the people that want to help. And when Richard called me and said that he had spoken with somebody and to call me because maybe we could work together. Well, at that time, I told him, okay, I'll do what I can. And I contacted some of the young men and women that had parents that were in the service and came. So, and Richard, they said we had to take these pictures out right now so we could see us all. And since all of you know us, we thank you again. But Mr. Mullally, would you please come up? And this is Richard Mullally from the Veterans. And he is doing his history on all the veterans, no matter color, race, or religion. Mr. Mullally?
Thank you, Connie. I'll speak for just a couple minutes. This picture on the wall is one of the big factors of why America won World War II. It's the Camel Cannon Gray Iron Foundry. At the time of the Japanese attack, it was the largest gray iron foundry in the world. And that's one of the businesses in Muskegon that went 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire war of producing material so that America did win the war. But the biggest factor in World War II was the people. 16.5 million Americans, and in Muskegon it's 20,000. Just imagine that. And many of the children and grandchildren of those people are here in this room today. It's World War II only. It's not World War I, like you said. I can't do that. That's practically almost impossible, but 20,000 Muskegon County veterans, I can handle a good portion of that. What Connie is holding is just part of an album, 24 Muskegon people. If you multiply that by 100, that's how many I've completed at this point. But I'm interested now today, of course, in the Hispanic veterans. Guadalupe Alvear, Ruben Escarino, I met him before he passed away. John Gomez, Joe Gonzalez, he's still living, I met him a few years ago. Antonio Guerrero, whose son is sitting right behind me. Ramiro Rodriguez, whose son is right here also. And Clemente Ibarra and Lorenzo Ibarra. There are no captions on those because they're in process of being produced for the museum. Plus 2 Velasco brothers. Out of 2,500, I have 10 Hispanic veterans. And that's why I'm here today, because I've got cards in my pocket to give to some of you. If your family member, deceased or not, served in World War II, please get a card from me before you leave today. The most important word, besides preservation, is free. This is a free service. I am trying to say thank you to all these people who actually saved the world for us so we could have freedom. And please help me. If there is a photograph of your veteran, contact me. We'll make sure that person is in all 3 of the museums forever.
Thank you.